So, hello and welcome to this 30 minutes now of mindfulness meditation. And sometimes I think that there are two mutually supportive aspects of mindfulness meditation, that they are, and that they can work together. So, the first is to relax, to release whatever tension that might be held in the mind or the body or the heart. And if there is no tension that's discerned, then of course one should not keep relaxing. At some point, relaxation doesn't really become relevant. And the relaxation is not the same thing as slumping or collapsing. There is an alertness and an uprightness, which is related to the second aspect, and that is the practice of clear recognition. The where there's a quality of attentiveness that is a little bit more maybe acute than in everyday life, where there's a clarity to our experience of the present moment that allows us to register or see or experience, know what is happening in the present moment in a particular way. And different times it's more being aware, more feeling, more experiencing, more knowing, more what some people would call a recognition. And that special way is to be aware without interfering with what we are aware of. So not to tighten up, hold on, not to have expectations, not try to make something happen, not try to pull away or push away. But there's a quality of freedom in the clear recognition. So this idea of relaxing and kind of relaxing and opening the awareness up to really be here with what's here. Part of this clear awareness can be expressed that it's to allow whatever we know to be here. So there's no pushing or denying anything, pushing away or denying. And there's no holding on and clinging to anything. And there's a kind of deep respect to all things. It's a deep kind of allowance. And one of the things that leads to is discovering that it's trustable to allow the Dharma to move through us, to allow phenomena as they arise and pass to come and go and evolve and change and process. But the key to it is a clear recognition where we kind of get out of the way. We're not kind of, we're not, the agenda of the self doesn't come into play. So this relaxing helps the clear knowing be relaxed and easeful. And the clear recognition helps us to stay alert and clear. It also helps us to recognize when what needs to be clearly recognized is the tension we have. Because if it's not easy to relax, then we shouldn't spend a lot of time trying to do it, but rather bring this loving, careful attention to what's going on here. And sometimes what we learn to relax is not the tensions in our body, but we relax the tensions in the mind in relationship to that. So these two things, to relax and have clear recognition and discover how to be aware, that gets out of the way and allows the Dharma to move through us. So to take a upright posture or a posture that allows you to be a little bit more alert. Maybe there's a little energy in the posture. For people who lie down on their back, sometimes that's found by um, the the forearm is the upper arm might be parallel to the bed or the floor, but the upper arms are pointing straight up towards the ceiling, one of them or both of them. And that not only gives it a little energy, but also gives the indication when we're starting to lose that. Um, it falls over the arm. And gently closing the eyes. And perhaps using a few deep breaths to really relax the larger tensions and holdings of the body. Breathing in deeply, and then a long exhale that really allows the shoulders and the belly to relax and let go. Sometimes if there's a long exhale, it's like progressive relaxation of the shoulders, just step by step. It's kind of like a little bit and a little bit more. And then letting the breathing return to normal. And still it's useful to relax, to soften, softening in the face. Softening, relaxing the shoulders. Maybe the area of the shoulder blades. Maybe you can open up the, your chest a bit and then see how you can relax your shoulders. And softening the belly. And then maybe relaxing, softening the mind. Imagining the mind is like the surface of a choppy waters, and the wind dies down, and the surface of the lake, the waters, spreads out wide and still and quiet. And then perhaps inside the mind, somewhere inside, is the place from which you know or are aware or you experience things. Often the location for where our sense of self might be. And as you exhale, maybe soften, relax. Dissolve that center into the wide field of the mind. And as you exhale, at the end of the exhale, soften, relax a little bit into the pause between the exhale and the inhale. ever so slight momentary pause so that you can allow for the inhale to arise on its own out of that pause. And you receive it. Awareness receives. Clear recognition receives the inhale. Clear recognition allows the exhale. And continuing clear awareness of breathing. But if something else occurs in the body, the mind, the heart, that's more compelling than the breathing, see if there's some way you can relax about its presence and practice clear awareness, non-interfering attention, as if it has permission to be there, no problem. And you practice clear awareness of it until you're ready to begin again on your breathing. If you are floating away and thinking, practice clear recognition of thinking and see if there's any tension involved or pressure in thinking that can be relaxed. And perhaps renew your practice of clear recognition, clear awareness of the present moment, and begin again with your breathing. And then as we come to the end of this sitting, to imagine what relaxed, clear recognition would be like when gazing upon the joys and sorrows of the world. What it would be like if you were able to stay relaxed, clearly recognizing the great Bodhisattva of compassion, the great embodiment of compassion, is sometimes named the one who sees the suffering of the world. And to see, to gaze upon the sorrows and joys of the world with relaxed, clear recognition. And in so doing, maybe the channels of recognition can touch the tenderness and the warmth, the places of care in our hearts, the place where the heart is nourished, nurtured by the goodness of the world. By our own goodness. And from this place of being touched, to consider how wonderful it would be if the suffering of the world could be transformed so that people are freed of that suffering, freed of oppression, injustice, freed of greed and hatred. And may it be so. As we end the sitting, wishing, may all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free. And may we learn to share this happiness, safety, peace, and freedom with each other. So today is the second talk on dosa, which is can be translated as hatred or hostility. And so we're following a sequence here of this week that yesterday I introduced the concept of non-hatred as a significant state of well-being that involves love and patience, calmness, peace. Not just simply the absence of hatred, but a reference point of a significant, healthy state of being that highlights the unsatisfactoriness of hatred, that highlights how it's a form of stress and tension and pain for the individual who has it. When we can really see the contrast to being in a state that's not hateful, not full of hatred. And today I want to talk about just this idea of dosa itself, And then talk about tomorrow we'll be practicing with it. Thursday will be the composting hatred, the transformation of it. And Friday will be the liberation from hatred and what's possible with that liberation. So it's important to appreciate that this word hatred, dosa, means hostility. The ancient texts talk about it being a wanting to harm. And it can also involve intense dislike, a kind of intense opposition to others, where that dislike and opposition is a form of harm making, that others feel somehow belittled or boxed in or oppressed or disrespected in some big way. When the dislike, the aversion is so strong. And now there can be kind of simple dislike of things, and people even in their maybe dislike of their activities, what they do, but it doesn't have to translate to any kind of disrespect for others. It doesn't have to even diminish our love for others. It's possible to have a kind of a heartfelt warmth towards others, even if we dislike some of the things that they do. But the intensity of it, even if we don't think we hate someone or feel hostility, and the intensity of, like we don't feel like we want to harm them, the intensity of the dislike um, is a form of hatred. And what it's not, or what it overlaps with, and sometimes includes and sometimes doesn't, is anger. And this is important because if we treat anger and this dosa, hostility, as the same thing, then all anger is seen as being a problem or being a source of suffering. But if we see it as sometimes anger is a very passionate sense of no, sense of this is unjust, this is not right, and the intensity of it might look like something that resembles hostility, but there doesn't have to be any hostility in it. I've been on the receiving end of what I called white anger, where I felt there was zero hostility, but and in fact I felt I don't know if I felt friendship from the person, but I felt no hostility. I felt safe, though the anger was intense. And the occurrence I'm thinking about, um, the intensity was in the message of no, don't do that again. And and as soon as the message was delivered, I could feel the person just kind of let it go, and it was an appropriate message, and it was received, and I was inspired by how clean it was, that intensity of no. So it was kind of an anger, but there was no hostility as part of it. So the way in which we have hostility and this movement of hatred can harm is a way of we harm ourselves. And that's why the reference point of non-hatred is so useful, because we see how we're harming ourselves. That it's like a wood fire where the wood is both uh, uh, the fire is arising out of the wood, and the fire is burning the wood. So in the same way, the heat of hatred burns the one who's on fire with it, harms it. Generally, when there's hatred, this dosa, the attention of the mind is externally directed, is directed to the object of the hostility. And some people, it takes the form of blame. Sometimes takes the form of being hypercritical, and unwillingness to see anything good about the other person, and only sees that aspect which is bad and or problematic. Um, Sometimes there's a recoiling from our own pain by blaming, by finding something outside of us to either blame or attack or to be hostile towards. Sometimes it's a deflection from being willing to experience our personal pain and suffering, and somehow redirecting that pain in a sense outward. And sometimes it's clearly to cause other people other people should feel pain. I'm feeling pain, so other people should feel pain. And so to recognize how hostility has this, and also if there can be hostility towards oneself. Some people hate themselves or some aspect of themselves. And there also there's a kind, it's not exactly externally focused, but there's a kind of objectification of something that the mind is directed towards. And anytime there's this objectification, then there is an alienation, both an alienation from the other person that we might feel that towards, or the other thing we feel that for. We're no longer there present to be able to see and feel, experience fully what's there. We're now seeing it through a particular filter, the filter of hate and hostility, aversion, and everything is seen in that light. Everything is wrong. Everything is. We just pick up all the problems, and but also, and so that's an alienation. We don't really there fully for the person. It's also an alienation towards oneself. That because we're involved in kind of an intense objectification of something, we're involved in a thought, an idea, a concept of something, that the attention is kind of towards that object and towards thinking about it, that we lose touch with ourselves. And so when there is intense hostility, then it doesn't have to be intense, but there's hostility. Um, it comes with all these different aspects. It comes with a burning, a tension, a tightening, a stressful state to be in. It comes with an objectification of something that is alienating, that's disconnecting. And as we'll see tomorrow, the task of mindfulness is to reestablish the connection, overcome the alienation both towards others and towards oneself by opening up and really being present. Part of, because hostility and hatred is so compelling at times, sometimes it produces its own, um, it produces its own fire that hurts. That hurt of the stress or the alienation produces more of the same, and it kind of like it keeps looking outwards for more things to hate or more things to feel bad about, to be critical of. And so there's a loop of hate sometimes where it's difficult sometimes to get out of, because to not have the object of the hate is to allow oneself to feel what's happening here, and that's just too difficult. Sometimes intense hatred comes from maybe from good reasons within. It could be that there's an intense protectiveness. Maybe there's fear for good reason. There are people who cause harm, and so then it's easy to justify the hatred because it's a form of protection from justifiable things justifiable reasons to be protected. And but the question is that really the best way to protect ourselves? And I'm not going to answer that question for any individual, but because the circumstances are so complex that I don't want to say that never have hatred if that's what protects you from the harm that other people are doing. But I believe that it's possible to be trained or be reflective or have a presence of mind that allows us to protect ourselves in other ways besides using returning hatred with hatred, with returning harm with harm. And but how to find that's interesting. That's an important topic. But the beginning of it is to have a willingness to study our own hatred, to really our hostility, to really stop and take a look at it. And and maybe the words hatred and hostility are such intense words that maybe you feel this doesn't relate to you often. But hostility and hatred um, are also very subtle forms of aversion, subtle forms of dislike and opposition to something. Subtle. Sometimes there's biting humor we use to kind of get back at people. Sometimes we say cutting things because we're upset with someone and we want to kind of have verbal daggers and stab them a little bit. There's all kinds of subtle ways in which we express um, hostility or say things which we don't believe we're wanting to harm anyone, but there is a kind of subtle kind of kind of attack that's happening. So to become sensitive to this, to become aware of this, and spend some time being willing to look at personal hostility, aversion, um, that sometimes takes the form of prejudice and bias, sometimes takes the form of turning away, walking away, shutting down, ignoring, um, where we feel like I'm not hostile, but we've kind of shut someone out of our hearts, and it is a kind of hostile act. And but to study it, to really get to know it, and it's a worthwhile exercise to do. And even if it's just for these next 24 hours, is to kind of review how this dosa, uh, both mild and intense, has been part of your life, and how it's part of your life still, and when it manifests, and what are the conditions that bring about, and then what your relationship to it is. Do you hate it? Are you uh, distraught that you have this within you? Do you justify it quickly, right, almost automatically? How is it? And see if you can practice this clear recognition. Just kind of relax with it, and find a time and place where you can relax and just kind of allow it to be there, so you can start seeing it clearly without the interference of hating our hate, being distraught over our hate, being critical of our hate, turning away from it, trying to fix it right away. Spend time getting to know it. It's the really getting to know and understanding how it is for us that lays the foundation for practicing with it well and moving on towards freedom. And because in Buddhism, the freedom from greed, hatred, and delusion is the definition, is one of the primary definitions for what full liberation is, it's well worth to spend some time with each of these, but this week with hostility, hatred, dislike, and really kind of understanding how it works for you. And hopefully you don't get discouraged or depressed. Hopefully you feel in a certain way encouraged that this is the way forward. This is a wise and mature thing to do. And then tomorrow we'll talk about practicing with it. So thank you, and may this all be for the purpose of non-hatred. Thank you.